Welcome to Proud Veteran Outreach, our weekly TV show where we ask you, the civilian, to help us identify the lost or isolated military vet, because military veterans have difficulty transitioning from active duty into civilian life. And the outcome of that is high suicide rates because they're isolating, and homelessness. And they're always in pain. So we need you to help us identify these people so that we can get help to them. My name is Jim Jurowitz. I'm an Army veteran, and our show is brought to you by the Proud Foundation, as well as the Vet Centers of Minnesota, located in Brooklyn Park, New Brighton, and Duluth. And today we are going to ask you as civilians to respect and honor another civilian who has a passion for helping and supporting military veterans when they die and when they have their funeral. A military veteran is entitled to a bugle service, and I'm going to let Bob Elmore, who is a volunteer, tell us that story. So Bob, before we talk about Bugles Across America, can you tell us what your career is and your background?
Yeah, I'm an educator, former band director. I'm an education and technology consultant in the Twin Cities, part-time professor. So I'm pretty busy with all those things. I'm also a musician. I play in a local symphony orchestra. But starting in high school, I have been playing taps for military funerals. And I'm now part of an organization called Bugles Across America, and we provide that service to any veteran who requests it free of charge, a live bugler at the funeral.
Great. For those who don't know, and I hope there's not very many, what is the origin or the concept of taps? What does taps mean?
Taps goes back, well, first of all, bugles
have been...
Is
there an acronym for taps?
No. Bugles go back many centuries in the military.
Yeah.
Obviously before modern communications, that's the way commanders communicated with the troops.
Yep.
There are about 25 different bugle calls in the Army. The Navy has more than 100, and one bugler unless it's a large ship, could be heard throughout the ship. So that's the way they communicated. So taps, in 1862, General Daniel Butterfield didn't like the extinguished lights call, and he worked with his bugler to develop something new, which is now what we call taps. The name comes, we think, from, it was 3 drum taps that were used before that, and so they started calling it taps, and that name caught on, and the taps that they created in 1862 caught on through all the services, including the Union and the Confederate armies, and now is used in all the branches of the service as extinguished lights. And if you've been in the military, you've heard taps right at the end of the day.
Right.
And when I've been on military bases, I hear that and other calls during the day. But it's also obviously used at military funerals. Okay.
And so the bugle has a significant role as a leadership tool, with the military. So the significance of the bugle is a place of honoring.
Yes.
Is the way it comes across to me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about why people are not aware of the fact that a bugle service is available, and what is the formality of the service. Is it just the bugle? Is it the folding of the flag? How is a military funeral properly sent off?
Yeah, so for veterans, every veteran, in the year 2000, Congress passed legislation guaranteeing every honorably discharged veteran the right to a minimum of 2 uniformed service members, active service members, and a bugler. Now, there are only 500 buglers in the entire military, and as you know, there are more than 1,000 veterans dying every week, every day actually. So clearly there are not enough buglers in the military accommodate this need. So what the military has done, and it's not a bad idea because of the necessity of it, but there's a device that goes, it's an MP3 player, it's a device that actually is inserted into the bugle so you don't really see it, and the bugler holds the bugle as if he or she is playing it, but they're really hearing a recording. And the one good thing about it is it sounds a little better than a recording because it's getting resonance from the actual bugle, but it's not a live bugler, it's a recording. So the reason Bugles Across America exists is to provide volunteer buglers for any veteran whose family requests it, and that's why we exist. And we have more than 4,000 volunteers around the country.
Great. So you have, you made a statement that 2 active military veterans will come out and perform?
Yes, and they'll do the flag folding ceremony, and that's a minimum. I've also been at veterans funerals where there's also the rifle squad.
So does the Bugles Across America pursue those 2 veterans, or is
no?
What's
right?
What does Bugle Across America do, and what does the family of the veteran have to do on their own?
Yes. Well, so for the bugler, it's very easy. They go to Bugles Across America website, and they simply fill out a request. That request then is sent via email to any volunteer member in the area. And in the case of the Twin Cities, in my experience has been, if I don't accept that request within about 10 minutes, somebody else already has it. So there are clearly more volunteers here than there are requests, and that's one of the things we want to change. We want to make people aware that this is available. There are a lot of volunteers. We could be doing a lot more funerals. We're just not getting those requests. So what we provide is a bugler. They need to go through to the military to get that color guard. My recommendation is work with your funeral director. They probably have done this and know how to do it. That's been my experience. So they're 2 separate things. When you go to the funeral director, and they will ask if you want a bugler, and you will say no, because I'm going to get a live bugler.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the history of this. So this was started in what year? 2000.
2000, when that
and
legislation
who was the facilitator of getting?
His name is Tom Day. He's in the Chicago area, and he's
a veteran.
Yeah, in the Air Force, and he had played many funerals, and was concerned about the availability of buglers now that every veteran had the opportunity to have this. So he started Bugles Across America as a way to provide a live bugler to any veteran who requests it, any family who requests it.
And this is not a government-funded
Absolutely
deal.
not.
This is something I think when I watched the video of Tom, he said that he was spending about $10,000 a year out of his own pocket
Yes.
to keep this thing rolling and going.
Right. Yes. We do not accept. We do not request money. I've never accepted any money for playing taps at a military funeral. So we do this purely as volunteers. There's no cost to the family. There's no cost to the family for the military honors either, but there's no cost here. We do it as volunteers.
It's an incredible program. What is the reaction to the family once they find out, because they hadn't thought about it? What is
Right.
the reaction to being honored and respected in such a positive way?
The families are generally very grateful, but it's not just the family, it's those attending. I spoke with, at a funeral I was at recently, I spoke with a Marine Corps veteran who was attending the funeral, and he was saying how much he appreciated having those military honors as a veteran himself. Just being a guest at the funeral, it was meaningful to him too.
So if, let's say, a church group wants to support and volunteer to attend these funerals, how would they go about learning where these funerals are, or what military veterans have passed?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer that.
Does Bugle Across America?
Each state has a state director, and if you go to the Bugles Across America website, you could maybe find some information about contacting that state director and say, could you please let us know, our church or whatever organization, could you please let us know which funerals the family has requested a bugler, because we'd like to come and show our support. That would be a nice thing to do, and they could do that, I think, through Bugles Across America.
Okay, and obviously the American public knows what an American Legion or a VFW is.
Sure.
But I'm assuming you can't just walk into an American Legion or VFW and identify that you want the Bugles Across America, so we need to do a little bit of educating in that area as well.
My experience has been nothing. I have a lot of respect for the VFW and American Legion. My experience has been they are not really involved in this. I have not really had, I've never been involved with them at all in a funeral, through Bugles Across America. So if the family requests the colors, that's happening through the military. Those are active duty military or guard people or reservists, but it's through the active military, and then Bugles Across America.
So, and frankly, it seems like it would make a lot of sense that if most VFWs or American Legions are serving food, that maybe you could have your funeral reception at the American Legion so they could tie them in. So.
I would like to see the American Legion and VFW more involved in cooperating with Bugles Across America to make sure their members know that this is available.
Yeah, well, we are working with the American Legions and the VFWs to help us with mental health training. Mm-hmm. There's a program that we have called Mental Health First Aid, which teaches people how to cope with people with mental health problems. It certainly isn't limited to just the military. I mean, we have a high suicide rate with teenagers, who are suffering from depression, and we need to cope with this depression and the like. So, tell us why you are using a trumpet instead of a bugle.
Well, traditionally, bugle goes way back to an animal horn. In Numbers 10 in the Bible, God told Moses to create 2 trumpets for ceremonial music. That was about 1400 BC. So we know that silver trumpets have been used at least that far back, but they were just horns. They didn't have valves. Valves came along in the early 19th century. But the reason that most people, including most military buglers, use a trumpet is just because their trumpet is generally, this is a very high quality instrument. I want the best sound I can get. And most of the guys I've seen using bugles, they tend to be historical bugles that don't sound as good. We want the sound to be the best. The difference between a bugle and a trumpet is basically the valves. And we're not using valves. Every note in every bugle call is only on open notes. So you don't need valves, but if you have valves, you just don't use them.
So when the veteran funeral is going on and the call comes out and they get you, they're getting somebody from orchestra quality trumpeter. So tell us about your orchestra experience.
In Burnsville, Minnesota, the Dakota Valley Symphony, I play principal trumpet, and it's quite a good orchestra, and so I take it very seriously, and I take playing taps as absolutely as seriously as playing any orchestra piece. I am, when you go to a military funeral, taps is the last thing that family hears before the casket is lowered into the ground.
What a great statement. I'm going to ask you, if you would, please give us the honor of playing taps as we close out our show.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming, Bob. I
Sure.
appreciate it, and thank you for your service.